Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can probably tell, especially the suspicious Aloysiuses among you, I have gone somewhere for Thanksgiving. I don't usually leave my little book room, but I've come up to Vermont to spend time with Mark at Richardson Reads. I'll leave a link down below so you can go and subscribe to his channel, because he's that close to 1,000 subscribers. And that's a good number to hit before the end of the year, don't you think? Anyway, I came up to Vermont for Thanksgiving, and today we went driving around book shopping, and oh my god, I found some things that have made me squeal, and I wanted to show them to you, especially since I'm hundreds of snowbound and polar bear infested miles away from my front door. There's no mail haul. There's no actual mail haul, but I have books to show you, because by the time we were done, I had a box full. We'll start off with some romances. So first we'll start off with paperback romances. Of course, you all know I love romances. I especially love historical romances. I especially love Regency romances. And the first one I found is this. This is Sin and Sensibility by Susan Enoch. And this is a modern Regency romance. So Regency romances are still the most booming part of the romance genre. And these things technically take place in the right 10 or 12 period span of time. The reason why I call them modern Regency romances instead of the traditional Regency romances that were written by, for instance, Georgette Heyer, is because the characters in modern Regency romances barely need to sneeze before they're throwing their clothes off. That doesn't happen in traditional Regency romances. These authors, the ones who write these ladies are wonderful. They are fantastic. I wholeheartedly recommend their books. I maybe slightly less wholeheartedly recommend taking them up on their friendly offers to go out for, quote-unquote, a few drinks, because, oh my god, they play as hard as they work. But this is a modern Regency romance. It was the one I got today, and it's there's no step back, there's just back cover art. Perhaps my extensive editorial team will simply put the image right here with all this open space that's being taken up right now by all these boring old books. Don't get used to it. I don't have an extensive editorial team back at Hyde Cottage, and I'm not going to import one. But right at the moment I do. So who knows what this video will look like. But I want to read you the description, because you'll see right away this is not a plot summary that you would get in a traditional Regency. This is Lady Eleanor wants an adventure before she surrenders to a dull society marriage. Adventure here is not in air quotes, but it might as well be. She doesn't want Parcheesi, in case you were wondering. And who better than the dashing and notorious rake Valentine Corbett to protect her from scandal and to school her in sin? So that was the modern Regency romance that I got. Then I got two traditional Regency romances, which typically don't have any schooling in sin and end in marriage. They're much more patterned on Pride and Prejudice. And the first one that I got is this. It's by Janice Layden, who I've never heard of before, and it's called A Noble Mistress, and it is not a Signet Regency romance. This is a Zebra Regency romance. They were out at the same time. They're very much the same type of thing. The Regency romances that I most love of all are Signet Regency romances. If you go to your local Annie's Book Swap or your local used bookstore here in America and you see a whole shelf of Signet Regency romances for $1 or $2 a piece, buy them all and send them to me. Don't hesitate. Don't ask if I already have them. Buy the whole shelf, put it in a box, and send it to me. Not so much Zebra Regency romances. They're very good, but they're not quite as good. The main thing that drew my attention to this thing is that it's twice as long as a normal Regency romance. It starts to approach the ordinary 350-page length of the modern Regency romances. But I haven't read it, so I'm glad to grab it. And I was starting to get disheartened. I was starting to think, okay, well, tiny town Vermont can supply you with a Zebra Regency romance, but not a Signet Regency romance. And then I found a Signet Regency romance. This is The Wagered Heart by Rhonda Woodward. And those of you who, my team will put the cover up here in close detail, but those of you who are familiar with Signet Regency romances will know that one particular guy showed up on the covers of all of these books. And this is that guy. And I knew once upon a time, a long time ago, one romance cover model who was just everywhere. And he told me a lot about what it's like to be in that business, but I have never, in all the time I've been reading Regency romances, figured out who this guy is. So if you see this picture, and you know the name of this model, I would love to know it, because he's on every cover. But this is just a classic Signet Regency, and let's see what we have here. The incident is quite unexpected. Enjoying a spring afternoon shopping with her relatives, Miss Julia Allard could not be better chaperoned, with the Royal Navy by her side. Even so, a handsome stranger catches up to her, and before she knows what's happening, Miss Allard is in his arms, being kissed. So I've got a full spectrum of paperback Regency romances here, but I also found hardcover Regency romances, so modern historical romances. And I couldn't pass them up because I love their authors and they were dirt cheap. So I got Stealing the Bride by Elizabeth Boyle, and this is, the hardcovers have the full picture on the back. And this is Stealing Another Man's Bride was the least of the Marquis's sins. Falling in love with her is another matter, and of course you have the couple on the back with the picturesque bridge in the background. Don't usually get hardcover romances, but I'll gladly take these. And then the other one's by Lorraine Heath. This is As an Earl Desires. I'll just hold these up in the distance because I'm assuming we'll be able to put pictures in there. And because you have a dust jacket for these instead of a gatefold cover, you have the cover, and then you have what would be the step back artwork on the back, the full artwork on the back. And this is, let's see here, Camilla is determined to find the perfect match for the irresistible new Earl of Seiche. But what if the only bride the Earl desires is the unattainable Camilla herself? So that was the full gamut of romances. I got a batch of romances. Wasn't expecting to find them at all, especially since the places where we went didn't give off that kind of vibe. So I wasn't expecting to find anything, much less a batch of stuff this good. And then the next few, this again was totally unplanned. We went from place to place, but the next few are nature-oriented books. There's this one, Robert Lemon, illustrated by Dawn Eccleberry. This is The Birds Are Yours, and I don't know if we'll be able to put this artwork. Dawn Eccleberry did the artwork, and it's incredible. Just the pictures are just amazing. And they run all throughout here. It's just an old mid-century guide to birds, their behavior, their natural history. And the other nature thing was this thing by Josephine Johnson, The Inland Island. This is also about half a century old. And it also has fantastic illustrations. Let me get one for you. Very different kind, more suggestive, much more pencil sketchy. But this is just the classic model. Solid owl. This is the classic model of so much great nature writing, where it follows a year. Pick a location and follow it for a year. Where the only thing that will make that book work is you have to do it really eloquently, and it really helps if you have great artwork. And this one does. It's a favorite of mine. I had a ratty old trade paperback forever and ever. Finally gave it to somebody, and then found. I mean, this thing is a naked hardcover. Must have been printed for a library somewhere along the line, but one way or another, it was dirt cheap, so I was happy to get it. And oh my god, in terms of finds, let me show you the find of the day. This is by Gilson Willits. This is Inside History of the White House. Let me show you our author. This is Gil Willits, who was an armchair historian, a wonderful old antiquarian, and a garrulous storyteller. And he composed and coordinated this book. He wrote it in Theodore Roosevelt's last term in the White House. So it was about to become what he refers to as a presidential year, where Roosevelt leaves power and his successor, William Howard Taft, about whom I know a bit, is sworn in and then moves in. The family, the retainers, the new pattern to this old house. Every owner makes it their own in some way. And this is a story of lots of the history of the White House, but it's told very much in the spotlight of the incoming Taft administration. And I read it as an interlibrary loan when I was researching Taft, but I never dreamed that I would own a copy. And here it is. It's just on a shelf in a bookstore in Vermont, and now I have it. So it will go. It is one of the only things I got today that will go in my little book room. There won't be any stages. I won't worry if I'm going to keep it forever. It will just go on my Taft shelf with all my other Taft books. So that was the kind of sort of the find of the day. But I still have 3 nifty things that I want to show you. The Frida Bean is wandering around here. She loves wandering around this place. She is here. She said, "Why don't you come up here, baby girl?" Instead of wandering around. There are all kinds of, this is like a 200-year-old farmhouse, so all kinds of little nooks and crannies where she can go and explore, and she loves that, unless she picks a nook or cranny that deep inside has a cat that's just sort of curled up and watching her. Those don't go so well, but all the rest of it is just fine. She's having a blast. Anyway, the first one I got, Journey to the Center of the Theater. That is a great Al Hirschfeld cover. Look at that. You can those of you who are old movie fans will recognize Katharine Hepburn, or is that Carol Channing? Yes, that's Carol Channing and Zero Mostel are on there. And Walter Kerr was an indefatigable hack of the old school, a wonderful, crabby old guy who had seen everything, heard everything, and who could do incredibly good, quotably funny work at the drop of a hat for anybody who waved $50 in front of his face. He wrote for the New York Tribune forever. He wrote for the Times forever. Covered everything. Was well known on Broadway. People knew when he was in the audience, that sort of thing. And this is, I think, the only collection of his theater criticism, which is the most perishable. It and classical music reviews are the most perishable kind of reviews in my line of work, because the theater, you don't, it changes from night to night, and if the performance of a show doesn't change from night to night, if it stays exactly the same from night to night, then it's a show that's not worth reviewing. It's a prepackaged thing. It's Phantom of the Opera or Cats, so you don't need to review it. But if you do need to review it, if it is real, then the reviewer is only going to be getting a snapshot. The whole feel of the chemistry could be different the next night. And reviewers know that. Same thing with classical music performances. Only worse because, I don't even know. Van Cliburn comes to your town, does a concert at the Civic Center, and by the time the review runs, he's hundreds of miles away. And a tiny fraction of 1% of the reading audience went or cares. So that's extremely perishable. But theater reviews, I wish there were more volumes of them. I really do. It's an art form in its own, and this guy was so good at it. He was so good at writing theater reviews where he brings you marginally up to speed and then just fills you in on the glory of what he was seeing. I've had copies of this many times, and I always give it away to theater students. And there are even a handful of people out there in the world who dream about being theater critics. There's no market for it at all, none whatsoever. But even so, but theater students love to know. They love to hear the people that they consider to be black and white celluloid giants long dead. They love to hear those people discussed as working actors and actresses, not as movie stars. And that's what you get in theater reviews that you don't get in, for instance, a collection of old movie reviews. You won't get that. You have to go to the theater for that. And so I'm glad to have a copy. God knows how long I'll hold on to it. This next one, almost the find of the day. If it weren't for, I used Book Day for Steve is not going to get any better than the Taft Watch. But this comes awful close. This is my guy. This is John Dryden. This is an extremely scholarly collection of 4 of his plays with great introductions and huge notes. And the whole series was overseen by a guy who did what is still the best biography of John Dryden. And most of you won't, I would guess, be really familiar with him. He doesn't have, for instance, shamefully, he doesn't have the big, popular 800-page biography that he richly deserves. He started My Profession, for instance, in the modern era. He was the first real book critic in the modern era. He started the profession of a lot of you, which is writing for money, writing as a living. He started that pretty much by himself, him and Afra Ben, in the modern world. And he did a lot more than people remember him for. The thing, ironically enough, that he's most remembered for is the thing that he only put his name on. He did very little of it, which was the big 1-volume translation of Plutarch's Lives. That he oversaw basically a workshop of really good jobbing translators for that. It certainly wasn't something that he sat and sweated over himself from start to finish. But his poems, mostly not remembered. His criticism, most people don't even know he wrote it. And his plays that made him so much money and made him so notorious that his name was known in London for this. When's the last time you even heard remotely about a Dryden play being staged? It never happens. And that's a terrible shame, because they really work well on the stage. Especially if your theater company is willing to spring for live horses. You really like live horses. And then the last book of this, I don't know how, I'm not using my usual camera, so I don't have any idea how long I'm going. But the last thing I want to show you was one of the first things I found, which is, this is Evan Thomas's biography of John Paul Jones, which feels a little bit, I really enjoyed it, but it feels a little bit disloyal to get it, because I actually knew and was friends with what I consider to be the greatest biographer of John Paul Jones, and so it's always awkward to buy a biography or a book on a subject after the one by somebody you knew. But this one is still really good. It's nowhere near as eloquent as the one for instance, Samuel Eliot Morrison's biography of John Paul Jones is not only historically beautiful, but also eloquent, and this is nowhere near as much as that. But this guy's a really good historian. Those of you who have seen all the work that he did after this, naval historian mostly, it's all worth reading. It's all just fantastic. And this was, again, these were all dirt cheap. They were Brattle level cheapness. So I could easily have got twice as many, but I kept thinking, you're going to have to get these home at some point or other. So that was the mail haul for today. That was the book haul. This little farmhouse where I am gets no books in the mail. I was told earlier today, with a bit too much glee, that the only boxes of books that ever come here are the ones that I send here. So I am flat out of luck. Nothing from Simon & Schuster or W.W. Norton is going to come here. It's all back at Hyde Cottage. So you can probably expect an oversized mail haul once I sort all that out. But in the meantime, these are at least books that you'll at least get the pretty artwork. So we have Evan Thomas's biography of John Paul Jones in a nice hardcover. This is a book I know I will keep. There's no reason on earth why I can't have two biographies of John Paul Jones. Then a scholarly collection of 4 of the plays of John Dryden. I would have liked it if it had been 3 times as long and was the dramatic world of John Dryden. That would have been wonderful, but this is just fine. I have a small Dryden shelf, and this will take a wonderful place on it. Then Journey to the Center of the Theater. I don't know how long I'll hold on to it. I will try, but theater students are omnivorously curious about the history of theater, and they are also notoriously broke. So I ordinarily end up giving this to people. We'll see. I know lots of theater students for my sins. Then Inside the White House. Just incredible. I would not, just a find of the day. I would not have imagined that God knows what journey this book took to end up on a shelf at an antiques mart in a small town in Vermont. And not only that, the synchronicity of that is fascinating enough, but then you add on the fact that it was just sitting there on a day when a person came by and saw it who knows more about the Taft administration than anyone since the Taft administration. So there was, all the temples were in place. This was the highlight of my book day. But then the inland island, just wonderful nature observations. The birds are yours, also wonderful nature observations, and both of them have fantastic illustrations. And then a bunch of romances. We have Lorraine Heath in hardcover. We have Liz Boyle in hardcover. And then we have 3 Regency romances. The 3 different kinds of Regency romances. There's zebra, signet, and modern Regency romances. So Regencies are typically disdainfully called bodice rippers. And the funny part is that in traditional Regency romances, no bodices are ever ripped. And in modern Regency romances, the bodices don't even get people warmed up. So I got one example from each, and it was just delightful. So I had a Vermont book shopping day, and it was a hoot. So I'll wrap this up for now. I'm sorry I'm not bombarding you with videos. You know, I am. Just briefly, just for a small window of time, I am acting like a normal person out in the real world. I'm socializing with people, doing other things. I know, it's very strange for me too. I'm enjoying it, but still, one of the unexpected side effects is no 5 video days. Sorry. It'll all sort out once things are back to normal, but in the meantime, I at least filled your faces with books. So I'll wrap this up for now. I've got something else I want to talk about, and then who knows, maybe no more videos until tomorrow. Sorry, book 2.